Now back to the show. This is The Law Show on CL 650.
Freedom is just another word for nothing left to lose. Nothing. That's all that Bobby left.
Now, me and Bobby McGee and nothing left to lose. There, that's both our family lawyers like that one. Dwayne Bishop is our producer, and he picks these little musical clips to enhance the quality of the show. And that one definitely evoked a smile from both Mark Perry and Anna Perry from Westside Family Law, our guests this morning on The Law Show here on CIL 650, talking about prenuptial agreements. And this seems to be, I mean, I think it is unromantic, Anna. You would acknowledge that it is an unromantic but highly practical thing for a young person, particularly first, because it's all very hormonal and wonderful. And, so a prenuptial agreement, though, it seems to be a fairly recent phenomenon. So I said this to my guests during the break, and they said, oh, gosh, no. This goes back to, Romans and Greeks. I mean, Anna says, anyone who had money back in the day had some kind of prenuptial agreement. Flesh that out for us. Give us an example or tell us the thinking that went behind it back in those days that still applies in 2015.
Well, it's always dealt with property. And I would say that the person with the property was the person requiring the agreement, and generally speaking, generational wealth. So making sure that the wealth stayed in the family.
Okay.
And that would be primary. You could take it back further in time to when their dowry was 6 cows and 2 goats.
Mm-hmm.
There was sort of an agreement onto the dowry. But remember, dowry would be a big deal in some cultures, and so part of the agreement would be verbal, talking about how much the dowry was going to be, for example, and then what rights they had vis-a-vis that dowry.
But with those agreements where there would be a dowry, the bride would be brought in, would those agreements not be hammered out by family members rather than the couple themselves?
Yes,
they would have very
absolutely.
little to do with it.
Yeah, very much
It
so.
would be the the Hatfields and the McCoys,
Exactly. Sure.
or the Lord Watfords and the Baroness Javinci, that they would be sorting out those details for their children's marriage.
Okay.
Right.
So now in 2015, the highly recommended practice of prenuptial agreements is it's not automatic. Anna, what percentage of young people or first-time people getting married in Canada today would have some kind of prenuptial agreement?
There isn't a statistic on that, interestingly enough. It's not tracked that I'm aware of through Statistics Canada.
Mm-hmm.
So would have to speak just from our own
Anecdotal.
Anecdotal. I would say there's also a number of people doing their own agreement at the kitchen table.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can't track the statistics from that viewpoint. I would say it's still lower than it ought to be.
Interesting. And Mark, but for marriages beyond the first marriage, a second or possibly even a third marriage, it's highly likely that in those circumstances there will be a prenuptial agreement.
Definitely.
Well, I mean, our ability, I think, to answer your first question about what is the percentage or the likelihood of a prenup agreement is anecdotally. So this would be clients that come to see us now to unravel the relationship and sort this out who have a prenup agreement.
Okay.
And my guess would be maybe 3 or 4%.
That low?
Yes. Now, for people who have had one marriage already, or more than one marriage, maybe that's double, 10%. That would be my guess, have a prenup agreement.
Okay. So, Anna, in a lot of cases then, based on Mark's rather alarming low numbers, are the majority of people that you encounter in divorce scenarios who seek your advice without a prenuptial agreement in most cases then?
I'm going to divide it into 2 categories because there's the people who come in the door who are old and or middle-aged. So depending on whether they grew up in a moneyed regime with trust funds, most of them are going to not have prenuptial agreements.
All right.
I would say 10 to sort of 15%. Not as low as 2 perhaps, but it's just, depending on who we get as clients. But the younger generation, I would say 30s, 25, they are more likely to have some form of agreement, some form. I just think that they're more educated. You'll see more women having property as well.
Oh, and bringing property into the relationship.
Yeah.
Bringing assets forward, right.
Yeah, the groundswell movement of young career women who are buying their first condominium. And parents
waiting
have helped them.
Yes, but they're also waiting till later to get married. They're not getting married at 21. They're getting married at 35.
Yeah,
right.
If they get married at all, I would say there's probably an equal number of people going into just cohabitation, common law, versus actually spending a lot of money on a wedding.
Right. Now, Mark, you are in a position where you were telling me a little while ago that you, this common law or cohabitation arrangement is now being formalized with a sort of prenup of its own.
Right, a cohabitation agreement. So I was telling you off air, Sterling, about a case I'm working on at the moment.
Right.
An agreement I'm working on. I'm acting for the male in the relationship, and it's a second marriage. He's got an adult daughter, one child. She's actually just about to become a lawyer herself.
Okay.
And he's got a partner of about 2 or 3 years that they've had a dating relationship, and they're planning on moving in together. And it's a very respectful situation. He wishes to ensure that his new partner is looked after and taken care of. He has a lot more assets and income than she has.
Okay.
But he also wishes to ensure that a good part of his assets will devolve on his death to his daughter. And so he's my client. I only speak with him. I don't speak with his spouse-to-be. But what he tells me is the spouse-to-be, the new cohabitation partner, is very supportive of this whole process. And is so partly because she is mindful of her relationship with the adult daughter and wishes to have all these issues addressed.
Good.
So that relationship,
so they can relax.
They can relax.
Sure.
That's right. The relationship can continue to grow and become a healthy relationship. So she doesn't have children of her own, interestingly. So it's an adult child, but it's still a stepdaughter for her. Right?
Sure.
So it's a very happy situation, and I'm happy to work on it and come up with ways to meet the two different interests of the adult daughter and the new spouse, and ensure everything is tied up. And if down the road something happens to the relationship, I would expect that they would hopefully just be able to look at this agreement, blow the dust off it, and put it into effect.
Anna, you were talking earlier about the number of ways that there are at our disposal to put together a prenuptial agreement in 2015. One of which is you go online and you download some kind of DIY, do-it-yourself law kit, and you fill in the blanks, and by gosh, there's a legal document. Now, does that have merit in court? If you both go through it and fill in all the forms, assuming you've at least filled out the forms properly, will that have standing in court?
Yes, it depends for all agreements, it depends on the circumstances in which it was made. So the hallmarks of an agreement was there financial disclosure? Was there some form of negotiation, or was this dictated by one party kind of overwhelming the other?
Sure.
And then I suppose the other issue is legal advice for both parties. But now in the era of so much online information, many people, I think, are choosing to kind of draft it themselves at the kitchen table, and then maybe have a lawyer do some tweaking, possibly.
So that would be, I appreciate that a lot of the reason for the kit in the first place is probably financial. A lot of people, I think, overestimate what lawyers cost, and will avoid seeing a lawyer for almost any reason because I can't afford it, and that's all they say. I couldn't begin to afford it.
Yes.
So, but at least
without making a call.
Right, and some of them are doing the smart thing though. They're doing the kit, but they're not just leaving it at that. Okay, here's our best effort. Now let's let a pro take a look at it and see where the deficiencies are.
And if you've got a complicated situation, then I really think it's important to talk to a lawyer. And then at times we engage the services of an accountant, a pension expert,
financial planner.
Yeah, financial planner, somebody who does trust management if there's a trust involved, meaning a trust settlement agreement. So those are the sorts of more complicated things. But for the average person who is just coming into a relationship and they've got a car and an RSP and whatnot, them sitting down and making their own agreement is quite feasible as long as they are thoughtful about what they put into it.
Okay, just before we take the break, and Dwayne's wig-wagging at us and he's all set to go, but what is the point of a prenuptial agreement? What essentially does it do for both people?
It's really what it does is set out their expectations as to what's going to happen if the relationship comes to an end. That's essentially it in a nutshell.
So is that the reason the participation levels are so low, is because it seems on first blush to be so negative? Well, let's sit down and really take a lot of time talking about what's going to happen when this thing goes on the rocks. And let's have long, earnest discussions about how we're going to divide our assets.
You know what I hear from people a lot of times, and I have friends that have 20-year-old, 25-year-old kids, and I'm, hearing about they're getting married, and I'm excited for them, happy, and I've often said to them, I'll go for lunch with you, I'll go for coffee, and I'll talk. What I hear from people is, we don't have anything.
Right.
So why would we do it?
That's what my daughter said to me. And we have nothing. We're bringing nothing to this. So.
But the response to that is, you don't have anything now.
Right.
But in the next 10 years, you will acquire assets, you will have incomes, you will presumably have children, you will have issues 10 years from now. So you can set out in advance what's going to happen as you acquire these assets.
Yeah, there's the forward-thinking view that there's going to be property acquired or inheritances, but there's also the fail-safe fallback of a marriage agreement. They don't have a prenuptial agreement.
Oh, okay. We'll talk about that. We need to take a quick break. This is The Law Show with Mark Perry and Anna Perry from Westside Family Law. Check out the website while we take a quick time out. It's westsidefamilylaw.ca, and we're back after this.
There's more of the show still ahead. This is The Law Show on CL 650.